Welcome back to Comical Opinions, and today we're going to give you a review of A Legacy of Violence number 10 from Mad Cave Studios. In this issue, Monica gets torn apart after losing the competition from the last issue, and while Nick and Hector are trapped in the sheriff's jail cell, and Nick begins to remember a shocking event from his childhood. But before we get started, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell for notification to let us know how we're doing. Your attention is greatly appreciated, and we would love to hear more from you. So, before we get started, let's talk about the credits. A Legacy of Violence number 10 is written by Cullen Bunn. Art, and which is the pencils, inks, and coloring is by Andrea Mutti. The letters are by Russ Wooten, and the cover is also by Andrea Mutti. So it's a very small creative team, but they're keeping it personal, and that makes sense for this type of issue. Okay, so let's recap where we left off. Uh, Monica and Andrew were captured by the serial killer, and they were told that if you want to live, you have to perform these grotesque, torturous type of surgeries on these two victims I brought along with you. Reluctantly, strangely, bizarrely, they decided to go along with the competition, and in the course of cutting up these bodies of people who are still living and still breathing and screaming in pain, however you want to assess the winner and the loser, Andrew comes out the winner. And so Monica loses, and in this issue, we see how that plays out. Also, Nick and Hector decide finally get a hold of the sheriff because Hector's had brought Sarah with him, who is the only person or witness to get away from the serial killer and can identify him, also sort of maybe, because we don't really get clarification whether or not she saw him without his mask on. But they reach out to the sheriff saying, hey, we need help. And what happens? They get double crossed. It turns out the sheriff is working with the serial killer, and he puts both of them in jail. So that's what happened in the last issue. Let's talk about what happened in this issue, and then we'll get to what we like, didn't like, and the score. So in this issue, Andrew makes good on his prize for winning the beauty contest, if you want to call it that, and he's forced to cut up Monica in strange, bizarre, horrific ways and put her body parts in different places and append body parts onto herself and turn her into this weird, grotesque, Frankensteinish monster for the serial killer's amusement. The serial killer is pleased by it, even though Andrew's disgusted by it. And when the serial killer says, I'm going to make you come back and watch, and now we're going to move on to our next thing, I should say, Andrew decides that he would rather kill Monica than let her live with what she's become. So he kills her. The serial killer tries to stop him, and then Andrew winds up killing himself to prevent the killer from getting any more of satisfaction from keeping him as a lab assistant, if you will. Meanwhile, Casey goes to the sheriff's office, finds Nick and Hector, frees them, and then they rush to go get Sarah. But while they're still stuck in jail, the sheriff takes Sarah and brings her back to the serial killer. Then everybody kind of converges and gets together and goes back to the hospital, presuming that's the direction the sheriff is going. And then they find the sheriff, but after he's already dropped off Sarah with the serial killer, and they chase him down in their car, hoping that they can still rescue Sarah before it's too late. While all this is happening, Nick has flashbacks to his childhood after he saw that weird uh, video, or I should say, I think it was an 8mm film of these horrific Nazi era during World War II medical and scientific experiments. And in a confrontation with his grandfather, he finds out his grandfather was part of the Unit 731 that was doing those bizarre medical experiments. His grandfather says outright, in almost a confident, matter of fact way, that he is still a Nazi. And when Nick tries to fight him, he's drugged, and it looks like they're getting ready, meaning his grandparents are getting ready to perform some kind of brainwashing on him, hopefully to make him forget, which is why Nick kind of feels like there's something in the back of his mind that he can't break loose. It's mind conditioning. Uh, Quick, interesting fact, or maybe not interesting, but bizarre fact about this: Unit 731 is a real unit. It is an actual unit from World War II that was composed of Nazi medical examiners and scientists that were in charge of doing bizarre, horrific war crime level type of medical experiments. So even though this is a fictional story in A Legacy of Violence, the foundations of where this whole thing is sourced from is actually a real medical unit from Nazi Germany during World War II. So take that for what you will. Cullen Bunn is certainly drawing inspiration from those past events. Okay, so what do we like about a Legacy of Violence number 10? Pacing is much better. I mean, now that we're down to the wire and we only have 2 issues left after this one, finally Bunn gets around to actually getting the story moving, providing some good pacing, uh, developing some plot, providing some urgency. All on all those counts, it's better. That's been the big criticism of this series, or maxi series, if you will, is the pacing has been dreadful. I mean, awful. There was a span of a couple issues there where literally nothing happens other than mood and fear and uncertainty, which is great from an atmospheric standpoint. But as far as actually telling a story, nothing was happening, and it was a big bummer. And for some readers, I wouldn't be surprised if they just dropped it completely. But in this issue, things pick up a lot, and so you understand what Unit 731 means to Nick and his family. You understand kind of the connection between the killer and the town. You understand. Yeah, I mean, things are happening, and it feels like the forces are kind of overwhelming numbers are converging towards this one killer, but it looks like the killer had help from the sheriff, and that it was part. Now we also learned that the way Administrator Patel, who was in charge of the hospital, made all this possible is because he was getting money from the killer in exchange for giving the killer free reign to do whatever he wanted to do. So there's sort of like a back end deal there that was happening. So a lot of information comes to light. The plot is moving. There's urgency. There's better pacing. Overall, this is a much better issue. What didn't we like about A Legacy of Violence number 10? The big downside of this issue, which is the same big downside of the last issue, is the whole scenario with Monica and Andrew being trapped in this room with this one serial killer. They're there. They're healthy. They have all their limbs intact. They have access to scalpels and all kinds of surgical equipment. Why are they following this killer? He's not pointing a gun at them. He's not drugging them. He's not forcing their hand by restricting them or doing anything other than saying, you must do this because I said so. In this issue, Andrew won the contest from the last issue. In this issue, he cuts up Monica, but the killer isn't forcing him to do it. And then at the end, when Andrew dives in and he kills Monica to prevent any further pain to her and kills himself from preventing himself from being used by the killer, why didn't he just attack the killer with his scalpel? It's sort of Cullen Bunn is trying to instill this sort of atmosphere or air of like madness, and people will be convinced to do whatever the killer tells them to do, but he never really shows how that's possible in this scenario, and he never really shows why Andrew and or Monica would willingly go along with it. They outnumber him. They have sharp weapons. Why don't they just jump him and stab him? It makes no sense. That I mean, in the moment, it feels gruesome and horrific, and it kind of makes you feel uncomfortable, as it should for gross, sick serial killer horror stories should be. But the setup and the way the scenario is constructed makes no sense when you think about it. The killer is just there, and he doesn't even have anything in his hand. Jump him, stab him. Why aren't you doing that? It makes no sense. And then so the way that whole scenario plays out is just, it seems dumb. I mean, there's no other word for it. It just seems dumb. But that's what we're going with here. So kudos to Bunn for instilling urgency and improving the pace and making things happen. At the same time, some of the things he makes happen are just dumb, and then you're just like, oh, this is silly. Now you feel like you're wasting your time sticking with it through 10 issues and with 2 more to go. So, so there's pluses and minuses to this issue. So, quick word about the art. What do we think about Andrea Mutti and the art style here? It's very moody. It's very atmospheric. It's gruesome and bloody when they get to the medical surgical scenes, and so it makes you feel yucky and gross, which is what it's supposed to do. That's this type of story. So Mutti's style works well. It's gross. It's creepy. It's haunting, especially when you see the shock and the horror on the characters' faces. Not everybody's a fan of the sort of the watercolor style and some of the looseness of the inks and the line work for the characters, but I think it works well here. And Muti nails the eyes, and that matters probably more than anything else. If you get the eyes right, you can live with a little flexibility on everything else. But in here, he gets the eyes right. So Final comments. What do we think about A Legacy of Violence number 10 from Mad Cave Studios? It's a big step in the right direction. Pacing is up, urgency's up, the plot is moving, we have momentum, we have direction, and long-standing questions are finally getting answered, which is a good thing. On the downside, some of the plot developments are just dumb, and that's just the way it is. And the art style is very stylized and not everybody's cup of tea. But personally, I think it works. But I can understand if not everybody is a big fan. Therefore, we're going to give Legacy of Violence number 10 from Mad Cave Studios a solid 7 out of 10. So I hope you enjoyed this review. Before you leave, please like, share, comment, subscribe to Comical Opinions. And Gabe Hernandez, your publishing EIC. You have a great day.